Ugh, it pains me to do this twice. So I had actually recorded the next video that I'm about to record well, that I am recording right now. I had recorded it, but the sound was atrocious. It sounded like a mechanical cat. It sounded like this with like mechanical sounds and thrown in for very good measure. So, what, pray tell, shall I do? I shall do it again! Oh, it pains me. But we are going to go to, let's go to Mythosia. How about that? Let's go to Meridian. Just because I feel like it, and because, oh hey, that's Elsbeth, by the way. If you didn't know, I mean, if you had started the game like not so long ago and you never ran River of Souls, you never really ran into the Elsbeth storylines and everything. Oh, hello. And everything, then you probably don't know anything about the woman that shows up on your loading screen every time you go to fucking Meridian. But that's it. Um, that's not what I want to do. I want to go to the tower. Where's the tower? Where is the tower? Oh, it's in the middle. Dumb. Okay. Dumb me. Alright, so let's go to the tower where there's shit tons of books. Woo! Books, 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 books. Actually, we can go right up to the top where, let's see. Where is this? Up. No, I want to do, shit. I wanted to go, let's go down. And then I can go to the absolute top floor. There you go. Where uh Kyrothanos, Uriel Chulun, sorry, and the Faceless Man, and then upstairs I think is Orpheal, if I'm right. Right? Yeah, Orpheal's here. Oh shit. Lantern Hook. Okay, I thought it was a storyline thing. Never mind. Oh, you can't really see out, huh? Wait a second. Let's change my settings so we can see everything. Interface? No. Video. Then solution? No, that's not it. I want to do advanced. That's right. Ooh, is that gonna work? A little bit. Object distance. Right? No? Aww. Object detail? Nah, that's not gonna be it. Oh well. That's okay. Whatevs. So we're gonna go downstairs for the books bit. Alright, so let's go here. Alright, Tio. So I had left off last time, well, before this time today that I tried, and then the mechanical voice and everything. I had finished with Ekehard's story. Now, we're gonna go with the Annal of Gizamelech. And something that I did find with all of these annals is that it's about the some of the original souls of the game. So Eckhart was about the shaman soul, um, and then this is Paladin, also an original soul. And then you have Dern's Ranger, but this book came a lot more recently than say Paladin and everything. Um, but yeah, so let's continue about the Annal of Gizamalek. The Storm Legion lieutenant strode before the assembled villagers who stood unmoving in a line. You have all become a part of the Storm Queen's army. Oh, and something else that I had found out throughout the video that I had recorded and sounded like shit, is that these annals, all of these annals, they're all about the Storm Legion. So these books were probably released around just before the Storm Legion. But these books are about Storm Legion, but before the expansion came out, and they are mostly about stuff that happens in Iron Pine Peak. Okay, so this zone is where Crucia, so the dragon of storms and manipulation, she was imprisoned here in Crucia's temple for a while, and then she broke out when the expansions, the first expansion, Storm Legion, came out. But yeah, for a while, when you were questing and everything, because this is a zone for 2735, the max level in original vanilla was 50. So you were basically questing in mid level, and you were already learning about the Storm Legion and how invasive they were becoming in Iron Pine Peak, and also a little bit in Still More, but not really. Um, the Moonshade Highlands was invaded by Achilleos' forces. Silverwood was taken over by the forces of life, so a little bit more of green scale. Gloamwood, um, I don't remember if that was taken by any force, but it was basically a lot of death magic in there, so probably a little bit of Regulus's influences. Scarlet Gorge. Uh, Scarlet Gorge is a kind of forgettable zone, mostly because it's like there's the little river here runs in the middle, so it's a low zone, a low area in the middle, but then all around it is very high. But if I remember correctly, it's taken over by forces of death. Um, so a little bit of Regulus's influences. Scarwood is life influence that was taking over. Stonefield was earth. So the forces of Lathis were taking over Stonefield. Shimmer Sand, Shimmer Sand was taken over by Earth, um, by Earth forces. So Lathis, Droughtlands, was it even what was the planar influence that was taking over this place? Um, Droughtlands was kind of like fire, so I'd say like a bit of yeah, yes, because there were draconids, um, dragonids, whatever they were called. But yeah, so the Male Forges forces, Free March was death, definitely death magic, and a little bit in like around the coast was a little bit of Achilleos's influence with plane of water forces, and then Ember Isle was fire. So, because there's a volcano in the middle, and Millforge, by the way, was imprisoned in Carcera, the volcano in the middle of the island. So, and I think Lathis as well, if I remember correctly, because in Ember Isle was the raid Infernal Dawn, and Infernal Dawn basically had two bosses. It had two major wings in this instance, and one wing was like very much Maleforge, and one other wing was very much Lathis. Um, and there was a like here. This was added after at the end of Storm Legion. This area was added underwater. So because if you remember, I read a book of the history of the was it this um the burden of guilt. I read a book about like the crossing. This was it. So because in the crossing it talked about Achilleos in the middle of the ocean while they were crossing from Amber Isle to Free March. And so in the middle here somewhere is Achilleos, but Achilleos basically was imprisoned somewhere in Hammernell Fortress at the very bottom of Hammernell Fortress. But he had influence over water because he was imprisoned way deep beneath, like somewhere in the sewers or whatever of the fortress. And so, slowly but surely, his influence through the water was taking over all of the ocean. And so, he was taking over, like, he was murmuring and whispering and influencing all of the aquatic life. And so, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to find out like the lore of the game. And even now I'm still learning. Even now, like I'm still learning from these books. Anywho, let's continue. Ah, you have all become a part of the Storm Queen's army, he called out. What is more, you have become a part of her. You will know no greater love than the Storm Queen's, which I am sure you felt when you looked into her eye. He gestured, and his soldiers distributed shovels among the villagers. They were pushed toward the bodies that littered the streets of their village, friends and family who had not submitted soon enough. Just over a rise, the sole survivor of the slaughter of Whitefall. Now, Whitefall is in Iron Pine Peak, and it is this town. So it is very, very close to where Crucia was imprisoned, and where Crucia was manipulating, even imprisoned. She had some influence over the life, the whatever was around. So all over this frozen lake, there are tempests. So like little tornadoes. There's elemental like storm elementals, and basically they were the chancel of labors was like a clerical library basically. And so I believe that basically a bunch of these soldiers that were stationed here, they were fighting off everything else that was trying to come at them, because they were hiding all the knowledge, and how to imprison Crucia was also buried, not buried, but it was also hidden in this chancel of labors. And so everything else around had become slowly but surely influenced by Crucia's manipulation, and a bunch of her soldiers were rising and fighting against all the cities like Breaker's Camp and Whitefall and Oathbound Pass and Defender Stand. Over here, there's Howling Caves, and there's a bunch of her fighters there. Uh, where else is there? But basically, yeah, so like Iron Pine Peak was really your first introduction to Crucia as a very uh powerful force to be reckoned with. Yes, all the dragons are very very powerful. As soon as I was a defiant, right? So as soon as you step foot into Free March, well, actually even before that, as soon as you step into the game, as soon as you choose to become a defiant, you end up in Terminus, which is not available after you finish that map. But basically, Terminus is the future. And in the future, Regulus was the most powerful dragon, and he had taken over the entire world of Talara. And so he was the most powerful dragon, but all the other dragons are very powerful too. It's just he managed to really go at the world and fight everything and kill everything and rise them again. Basically, anybody that died, he could raise them and make them into his soldiers. Undead army, you can't take that over, man. You can't take that. So anyhow, blah, 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 blah. Though her fingers shook with the cold, she guided the bullets into the barrel of her gun. As the villagers dug, one of them fell, too weak for the work. You, said the lieutenant, gesturing towards one of the other villagers. Grisha has no room for weaklings in her army. Bury him with the others. The villager stepped forward, empty-eyed and raising his shovel. Just before the shovel came down, a bullet knocked it from his hand. The lieutenant turned, barking to his men. Marksmen! The soldiers rushed up towards the rise. A slender young woman stepped up with a rifle propped against her shoulder, and as a bullet exited the barrel, it shot forward with an arc of lightning behind it that spread through the chest of the soldier it entered. A second shot followed right at its tail, hitting against the second soldier with such thundering force that he was knocked back 15 yards. This is like an ability of marksman, being able to knock back and also thundering force. Um, Marksmen have the one of their buffs is to add electricity power to their bullets or arrows, whichever weapon they have. Um, Yeah, and also knocking, but also jumping back is one of their skills. As the first soldier reached her position, she hoisted the gun and leveled a shot into his chest. Blood sprang in the snow. As the last of the group reached her, she leapt back unnaturally, landing 20 yards back and firing again as she did. The force of the bullet dropped his target but also arced out and toppled his companions. The battalion's mages finally managed to get it in range of the girl and hit her with a stunning bolt. For a moment, she seemed snagged, then, as quickly as the effect had hit it, was gone, and she was running with unnatural speed. That's another of their skills through the snow. So basically, like these books about the souls are talking about their power, their skills, their abilities, or their buffs even. Um, she reached a high position and then stopped, turning her rifle toward the lieutenant. He barked an order, an edge of terror to his voice. The legion's mages doubled their efforts, hurling spells toward her. She danced from side to side, and the spells fizzled against her. Bullets dropped, the mages one by one, and once again she directed her eye toward the lieutenant, who scrambled back in terror. "This is for Whitefall," said the girl in an emotionless voice. Local legend says that the bullet hit with such force that it decapitated the lieutenant. The rest of the battalion ran in fear from the sniper and her unerring bullets. There was nothing that could be done for the people of Whitefall, and the first act of the day, of the one-day legendary marksman Jiza Malik, was to bury the people of her village in the frigid earth of the Iron Pine Peaks. Ooh. Um, Next, we're going to talk about Phineas Rothman. Now Rothman is a name that you encounter, I believe, in either Free March or Stillmore. It's basically he's a Mythosian and from a very famous family in either of those zones. I forget which one, but basically he's a Mythosian, and he or one of his members of his family ends up um, as a follower of Regulus, if I remember correctly. It's yeah, so I do know a little bit about Rothman, but it's kind of fuzzy in my mind. Anywho, so let's read on. "Stay here. Those tricks the elves taught you won't frighten the Storm Legion." So again, we're talking about the Storm Legion, but this was back in vanilla. So the Storm Legion was kind of um, a force that we didn't know much about. And so we were just fighting their lieutenants and fighting their soldiers and whatever, but not really ever meeting Crucia ever. We just we heard about it in vanilla, but we never really knew anything about her until the expansion announcement, where we saw a video of her breaking out of her prison in Iron Pine Peak that I showed before. Phineas Rothman's brother said, laughing. "Imbecile," Phineas thought, watching his fellow tribesmen ride into battle. "My tricks frightened even my teachers." Sickly son of a Mythosian chieftain. Phineas Rothman was sent to study magic with the elves, less to bring the arcane arts to his people than to stay out from under stomping, booted feet. But the elves sent him home early, not because his research into fire magic nearly burned their sacred grove to the ground, but because the urgency of human youth made them uncomfortable. So for this, I kind of wonder if he was impatient, because whenever you talk about the urgency of human lives, is you kind of talk about um, like the impatience of people, and how little life we have and how urgent we feel about living our lives. So I believe that's what they're talking about, the impatience, or the whole like, oh, I only have one life to live and it's not very long. Rothman trudged over to the edge of the cliff to watch as slowly the valor of the united tribesmen became the mindless discipline of Crucia's Storm Legion. Suddenly, an electric blast erupted in the middle of the battlefield. Whether thanks to lightning or terror, the hair on the back of Phineas's neck stood up and he whispered, "Storm touched." Crucia herself, Dragon of Storms, had possessed the Legion's commander. Phineas knew she could bring to bear superhuman tactics and storm magic that would eradicate every Northman in that valley. He knew this even as he rode to the battlefield, quick as a midsummer fire through dry scrub. Leaping off his horse, Phineas turned into a streak of flame and flashed toward the front line just as the Mythosians quavered on the edge of disaster. Standing on the front line, Rothman conjured exploding fissures of magma, completing in mere seconds an incantation that took his elf tutors minutes. White hot flame lanced from his fingers, sending charred chunks of legionnaires flying in all directions. The Storm Legion's rally became a rout. An arrow slammed into Rothman's shoulder, jarring him into a state of sharp focus. The possessed Storm Legion leader advanced, aiming his second arrow at the mage's heart. Phineas screamed at his assailant, exhaling waves of flame that burned the bow away. The general drew his sword and charged through the flames. 2 steps from Phineas he stopped, a statue of solid ash. Phineas's laughter blew the ash away on the northern breeze, joined by the roar of his clansmen as they ran down the fleeing Storm Legion, even as a voice hissed from the sky, "I will kill you, little mage!" Years later, as Phineas fixed the keystone to Crucius' prison, he taunted, "Remember what you promised me?" and laughed again, breathy and crackling like a bonfire. Oh, taunting! I love it. So he's the one who's like taking care of the prison, but it does falter because Storm Legion happened. Now we're going to talk about Vashir Altan, who is a champion. The balmy warrior Vashir Altan was the first to bear the title of champion. His first documented appearance was when he battled Crucius' whelp Arconis, known as the Bane of Carrington. I have no idea where Carrington is. If you know, let me know, but I don't remember this place ever at all. Carrington. I mean, it doesn't ring a bell at all. Would it be somewhere in Stillmore? Care, Twisted Hollow, Burlingham, Ravenna, Crusaders, Wardens, Trial, Edgewood, Barcliff, Belmont, Broken Vale, Phoenix Rise, Hillcrest, Wolfsbane, Crown Hill, Ston, Sparrow, Bloodgrove. Yeah, I don't know where this place is. Carrington. It sounds like a Mythosian name, so it would be either here or there, to be honest. Either in Iron Pine Peak or in Stillmore. Because I don't think there's any Mythosian stuff in the other zones, if I remember correctly. But I don't know. If you know where it is, let me know. Also, I had never heard of Arconis before. So, I mean, if you have and you know the lore, let me know. Okay. So, when Vashir rode into town, its human population looked on at him in suspicion, but he ignored their scrutiny. Yeah, that's something. The Bami were not very, they were not very welcome, or they were welcome, but not necessarily liked, um, in the beginning, because they thought, oh, they're different and they're brutal and they're barbarians and blah blah blah. So like the human population and most of the other races, they kind of looked at Bamis as meh, whatever. They tolerated them, but they weren't really friendly with them. Even within the Defiant faction, there's a bit of like tension between between the other races and the Bami for some reason. But he ignored their scrutiny. Within hours of his arrival, Vashir entered the ruins of Castle Carrington, where the worm laired. Sizing up the beast, he bull rushed. That's an ability from champion. The dragon spawn with reckless abandon. An epic battle was fought across the ruins of the once great castle, wherever it is. At the end of it, Arconis lay dead in the courtyard, Bashir's massive two-handed blade in the whelp's throat. "Start a fire, we feast tonight," was all he is recorded to have said to the town's inhabitants. In the evening he feasted and enjoyed the hospitality of the people of Carrington, but by morning he was gone, tales of his exploits continuing to arise throughout Talara. While the Bami of the Canyons had many disciples of Bashir, the otherwise human residents of the Duchy of Carrington were also known for a number of blue-skinned champions, who brashly rode forth from its borders for the next few generations. Their road one of glory, seeking to overcome the impossible through the mastery of the blade. I wonder, because I know the Bami actually came from the Plain Touched Wilds. This is where the Bami were born. I wonder if Carrington would be here. Bronze Reach, Stalwart, Tor, Hook, Pato, Watch, Stormbred, Islands, Carrion Heights, Hunter's Camp, Brigand's Bluff, Redoubt, Fallback, Splitmouth. Uh, yeah, no, I really don't know where Carrington is. Like, all the main cities are marked, so I don't know where it would be. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Next, Annal of Warlord Borte. Another Bami. Most warriors are Bami, didn't you know? That's why I'm a Bami too. Didn't you know? Didn't you know I'm a Bami? Yeah, I'm purple skinned. Well, you would see my face if you knew. I mean, if you saw my face, you would know. But yes, I am a Bami. Yeah, you can see a little bit better here. Blue skinned. Bami females are like the. I chose a Bami female because I thought the Bami males were way too big for me. Just saying. And like I didn't really like the look of, especially for a warrior, I didn't really like the look of the other races because the dark elves, they kind of looked the F, they kind of looked a little meh to me. And then what's the other race for Defiance? S and Kalari. Okay, so the Kalari are the Dark Elves, and I wasn't really fond of them either as for a warrior. Like I didn't really feel like they were solid enough, and then I didn't really like the look of the other the Guardian races either. So I decided to go for Bombing because like it's she is a female, so she's a little bit punier than the males, which are like fucking huge, but she still feels and looks solid, so that's why I chose her. Yay, Morgul. All right. So we are talking about Warlord Borte. Among the greatest generals of Talara's history was Warlord Borte, daughter of the Shalastyr Bami leader. So Shalastyr are the blue genie-looking air elementals that you found that you discover in the plain touched wilds. So they look like genies basically, and bommies are basically like locally bred from the Shalastyr and the whatever race was there before. So the bommy are basically a mulâtre, the racial mix, basically. I forget what mulâtre is in English. Excuse me. Though she claimed many victories, her greatest by far was breaking the hold of Crucia's forces on the Iron Pine Peaks. When she marched a force of assembled Talarans to overtake the stronghold of the Storm Legion, the Talarans found themselves outnumbered by nearly 4-1, and hope all but abandoned them. Infiltrators from the Storm Legion only worsened matters, whispering insinuations on the succor of surrender, succor, which quickly took root in hearts weakened by terror and weariness. Borte, hearing the rising din of resignation, rode before the army as dawn broke on the day of battle. Sons and daughters of Talara, I see the fear in your eyes, cold as these icy peaks, but I command you, banish it. Stand unbent before the forces of the Storm Queen and her wicked brood, and laugh at them for assuming you would break. Every one of us has come here today with strength in our hearts, and hope that tomorrow the sun will rise on a world free of the Bloodstorm. The Bloodstorm is basically all the dragons, all the big dragons. So Regulos, Crucia, Lathis, Mailforge, Achilleos, and so on. I think that's it, anyways. A belief that our children will be born knowing no fear of war, no threat of invasion, no screech of plane or whelp. Crucia's greatest strength is our hopelessness. Her great desire is to break us, to conquer us, and for us to submit before her. But in standing against her, we have already won. We have proven we are not afraid, and that we will not be overcome. We are girded against her victory by the valor of our own broken hearts and the persistence of our spirits. She paused, gaze sweeping over the assembled mass, and back straightened, emboldened by her words. In a not too distant place, the Shalisteer stood against Crucia and drove her back. Led by my father, Crucia was compelled to abandon her campaign for their submission. Today, I bid you do the same. Bend them, break them, hold fast this world with the ballast of our valiance. Rip Talara from Crucia's claw and make true the promise of a future free of corruption. Ride, my brothers, fight, my sisters, crush them. A great cheer rose up among the assembled forces, and they were driven forward into battle with Borte's words, surrounding them as a shield that bolstered their attacks, healed their wounds, and kept Crucia's touch from controlling their minds. Borte led from the thick of the battle, manipulating allies and enemies alike with auras of inspiration and intimidation. As her main force confronted the brunt of the legion, strike units took out their fortifications before crushing their flank. Ooh, that's a good one. I love that speech. Calliope is a tempest. So, Calliope, this book was introduced during Storm Legion. So during the expansion. All of these that do talk about Crucia, they were added before the expansion. Um, but Calliope the Tempest is talking about a zone that's in Storm Legion. So obviously it was introduced during Storm Legion. Calliope, and by the way, Tempest is a warrior soul. So if you've ever heard of Storm Torrent, Lightning Torrent, and Wavelength, and so on and so forth, that's warriors. We have this awesome soul. This was the first ranged soul that we had in our arsenal. Now we do have Reaver that's ranged, but Reaver used to be actually a tanking soul before Nightmare Tide. But for some reason, they decided to change it because I guess people weren't having fun as Reaver tanks, which actually is so not true because my old guild leader was a warrior tank and he fucking loved Reaver. Just saying. Like Reaver wasn't so much used in raids too much, but it was very very good because basically they healed off of their enemies. So basically, soul sickness was a like a leech ability, which it kind of is now too, but back then it was a leech as a tank, and then you had I forget what was. I think dire corruption was also in the original Tanking Soul too. But basically, yeah. So it corrupted the ground around your target, and you would gain. I think you would gain life from it. I'm not sure though. But basically, no, you wouldn't gain life, but it was you whatever who whatever mobs were in that corruption, they would be attracted to you. So you would gain aggro from this dire corruption, which was actually super good apparently. And then what else was in this? I think Stumbling Morass I think was also back in the tanking days. Um I think that's it. Yeah. So this was from the original Tanking Soul, this too, and Stumbling Morass as well. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Maybe Decaying Defenses. Anyways, let's read. Calliope, the Tempest. Calliope waited in the shadow of the white drake. The ancient creature, a minor queen, was eating loudly, in crunching bites and gulps. There's a crispness, she said, swallowing, that you only get with lightning. She looked longingly at a cage filled with prisoners. I should have been a cook. Calliope grimaced, sweating in the armor of a legion officer she'd ambushed outside the tower. At last the drake finished and rocked forward, summoning an image of the continent. Have you heard, Captain, of the Tempest Jewels? Calliope was a Tempest Jewel, a skilled warrior who had learned to bend lightning to her will, and a sworn enemy of this monstrous invader. So, Tempest Jewels is basically when you first enter Storm Legion, you get to choose either continent where you want to start. Um, Vervain is the life continent, and then you have Duskin, I believe, is the death continent. When I started the expansion, I chose Vervain. So Cape Jewel is where I started, and you see Tempest Jewels there. So it's a familiar. The Tempest Jewels are familiar faces if you have quested in Vervain. I mean, obviously nowadays leveling up is very very quick, especially when you're leveling up to 70. But back in the day when you started at 50, which no, actually you started at 48, um, if you hadn't reached 50 yet. Um, I mean, if you hadn't been playing at 50 at the end game in the original vanilla Rift, but like me, I started playing halfway through, not even halfway. I'd say a quarter through Storm Legion. So the expansion had already become free to play. And I yeah, so when I started Brevane, I was 48, and yeah, you see a lot of Tempest Jewels in Cape Jewel. Just saying. But yes, so Tempest Jewels are skilled warriors who had learned to bend lightning to their will and a sworn enemy of this monstrous invader, meaning Crucia. Holdouts, she spoke quickly in the dead captain's tongue, meddling Bravains who escaped at Tempest Bay. Meddling? Storm swirled in her eyes. They're killing our brethren, weakening our hold on the steps. Steps of infinity, I think. I think. The Drake concentrated and Peladane flared to life on the conjured map. Oh no, Peladane is on Duskin, if I remember. Right? No, Peladane is No, Paladin is in Brevane, so it's one of the. I guess it's one of the towns. I guess in Cape Jewel. I guess I don't remember exactly. Here they recruit initiates from the caves we haven't cleansed. Calliope tried to hide her surprise. The Legion knew more than they expected. Here, she paused, pointing a talon near the symbol of the tower. They gather a storm to march on my citadel. These are your enemies, Captain. Hissing through an arcane ritual, she transformed the map into a massive portal. And this is the army, your army, that will cleanse them from our domain. The shimmering gateway offered a view of, and transport to, a waiting legion. Elementals and footmen crowded the legs of mechanical Goliaths, while winged beasts swooped overhead. Go, the drake commanded. Yours will be the tempest at the heart of the storm. Yes, said Calliope, it will. She drew a blade and flung a set of pulsing orbs through the gate. The drake shrieked in confusion, and as they began to explode on the other side, one after the next, punctuated by sizzling torrents of energy Calliope hurled through the portal. Roaring, the drake chanted the gates closed, but not before the surviving soldiers returned a volley of fire. Calliope absorbed their strikes and unleashed focused lightning against the drake in her tower, leaping from the structure as it crumbled, riding the wind, nearly weightless, toward a column of advancing warriors. Ooh. Next, Dr. Wesley Norris's psychic mail. So this is about this expansion. So Prophecy of Ankit is the expansion that this book is talking about. A letter, sorry, I will letter to my descendants on how we escaped the tyranny of the gravitic prison of the crystal sphere. We live inside the Tower of Anket. We no longer feel the need to leave her protective embrace. If needed, Anket can create a simulacrum of our bodies and we can explore the outside world in safety. However, she's as versed in all the investigative techniques as any of the mages of Elidu. We trust her to run the exploration of the last of the known universe, while we devote our lives to the higher philosophies of meaning and enlightenment. Our magical knowledge is nearing completion, save for this curious oddity known as ascension, where lesser mortal beings gain great power and have disrupted the natural order. We have had dealings with them as we have moved through our rapidly expanding universe. The wheel that collects a soul reborn throughout time, the man whose sacrificial death changes reality, the vessel that binds the gods, the beast and all its pleasures, all of them. As the universe grows, we discover more and more. Each has conquered worlds, and as time has passed, has grown more powerful and more unstable. There are rumors that an ascended woman of great martial strength is binding them together, making an ascended court. In council, the sages of Elidu worry about the gods and the worlds that have not yet fallen under their sway. We now suspect that this stranger who has helped us advance through the ages is one of these ascended. We have directed Anket to investigate. So, the Tower of Anket is basically the middle of the map when you get to the celestial lands, right? Um, so a lot of people that used to live on on the comet, they basically don't leave the tower because they just because Anket just creates a simulacrum, which is basically a copy or a clone of their bodies, and they can explore the world. Um, she is as versed in all the investigative techniques as any of the mages of Elidu. Da, 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 da. While we devote our lives to the higher philosophies of meaning and enlightenment. So they're trying to find how to ascend, what is ascension, and how to do it. Um, lesser mortals. That's great. Thank you, bitches. Um, I'm not sure what this all means. Okay, this bit where it talks about the wheel that connects a soul. Um, I think, and bear with me, I don't think that's the truth, but I think that the wheel that connects a soul reborn throughout time. I think this is talking about the river of souls. I'm not sure. The man whose sacrificial death changes reality. This is talking about the time where well, I didn't video this, but basically during your questing you you help Orpheal and Asha to kill, or not to kill, but to pit Anket and Krusha against each other. So this was like the introduction of Vostagar. And so I think, and when Orpheal dies, it changed reality. So I think this is what this is talking about. The vessel that binds the gods, I don't know what that is. Okay. The beast and all his pleasures. I think that's talking about Greenscale. I don't know. All of them. So I don't know what this bit is all about. If you know, if you have a better idea, if you remember something from the lore that I don't, please tell me. Here it says there are rumors that an ascended woman of great martial strength is binding them together, making an ascended court. Um, we now suspect that the stranger who has helped us advance through the ages is one of these ascended. Um, I think this is talking about Asha. An ascended woman of great martial strength is binding them together. This is probably talking about Asha, Katari, making an ascended court, about the gods and the worlds that have not yet fallen under their sway. Ugh, I don't know. I do know that basically the Elitu, not Elitu, but Anket is like fucked up. The entire story of the celestial lens is very fucked up to me. It's basically, all I know is that it's a comet. So we're trying to make sure that the comet doesn't hit Talara. That's all I know. We now suspect that the stranger who has helped us advance through the ages is one of these ascended. Which one? I don't know. I mean, is that Asha as well? I don't know. Ugh. Durns, Ranger. So Durns is one of the people that you encounter in the Bindings of Blood Grayscale encounter. So she is one of the NPCs that you can get a buff from when you enter. When you're about to fight Toxilua and no, not sorry, not at the beginning of the instance, but maybe, yeah, maybe actually, maybe. So yes, it's one of the NPCs along with Amunet and uh the Beastmaster, I forget his name, and the cleric. The cleric dwarf, if I remember. Oof. So these four or five people that you NPCs that you encounter in the raid are only four or five people from the raid are able to get one of these buffs from Durance, from our Amunet, from the Beastmaster, from the other person. So only one person at a time can get this buff from these NPCs. One NPC basically, and so Durns is one of these people, and as a ranger, I believe that the ranger gives an extra ability that you click that deals more damage. I believe because ranger does not have a cleanse. That would be a marksman. So ranger would be uh, the NPC that would give you an extra DPS ability, but it's like every fucking 5 or 10 minutes, if I remember correctly. The elves have always shared a mystical bond with the beasts of Telara, but this ancient compact was sundered with the arrival of Greenscale and his fairy minions. It was Durns, an elven huntress, who discovered that the capricious fairies could speak to the brutes and lure them to serve their twisted court. For a fortnight, she stalked the Feylords and studied their every move, determined to learn the secret language of the wild. Knowledge in hand, the huntress methodically restored order to her home, turning the beasts of the wood against the slaves of Greenscale. Unprepared for an assault from within the heart of their stronghold, the fairy court was quickly overrun by the packs of wolves bred to protect their borders. Many fled the carnage, only to fall with Durns's well-placed arrows through their hearts. The few surviving fairies abandoned the forest, choosing the wrath of the great dragon over being hunted by the first of the rangers. But yeah, so Durns was present during the binding of Greenscale. Um, and next one, Elementalists, the First Mages. So yeah, obviously this book appears to be about the first mages of Talara. So Elementalist was the first soul that mages would get, I guess. Or how about, oh, I believe, I guess, that Elementalist was the first soul that was created for by Tryon for mages. I guess it would make sense that they would call it the first mages. It was before the Age of Dragons that pioneering mages of the High Elves began to study and exploit weaknesses in the elemental forces, harnessing and redirecting them against the invading forces. This dangerous art had dire consequences, since a loss of concentration by an elementalist could end in immediate and painful death. Despite these risks, the elementalists were effective at turning the tide of the war. Their art kept them far away from the battlefield, and their minions inflicted heavy losses on the planar hosts invading Talara. Today, this arcane art still flourishes across Talara, and it remains as important as ever. Those mages who demonstrate an impressive force of will and an affinity for the natural order often make accomplished elementalists. Those mages who do not share these talents and begin summoning the elements typically don't survive very long, probably because their minions turn against them. um, Next, Entombed in Carcera. So, Entombed in Carcera is Mailforge, but I think also Lathis. It is known that Melforge was imprisoned within the volcano of Caracera. All right. He had taken the mountain to be his lair and the heart of his power, and so it was in that location that the heroes of the Campaign of Flames trapped him. So I think the Campaign of Flames refers to the binding of Malforge, the binding of blood, the binding of the storm of the Bloodstorm. What has been completely scrubbed from history is the exact method by which it was accomplished. Scattered records indicate that his entrapment was the product of collaboration between the brightest Kalari of the day and the heroes who led the army against Maelforge. Kalari were the people who inhabited Emberal, which is there, right? So the level 50 zone that was uber fucking hard when you were 50. Not so much anymore, but I mean, if you go back and you like mentor down to 50, stuff hits hard. So, anyways, the binding of blood for Maelforge included Talos Rhoda, the purifier, Kareen, the bard, Ula, the reaver. So I'm guessing back in the day it was a tank. I guess, I don't know. Asius, the Kabbalist, and Nazim, the Riftblade. The hunters knew their prey, and the Kalari knew their island and its particular powers, surrounding the source wells from which they drew their power. Or perhaps, and this is only a speculation, the source well, singular. Translations are fuzzy, as the Kalari who first came to the island spoke the most ancient of Elven dialects, a dialect that has since passed into obscurity. However, most linguists with a mind for critical thinking agree that where popular texts refer to source wells, their predecessors only refer to a single source well. Only after Maelforge's imprisonment do we see consistent references to source wells in text. Given this information, one begins to wonder if perhaps the rest of the source wells actually formed as a result of Melforge's imprisonment. How could such a thing happen? What follows is only theories formed around a foundation of speculations, but resolved from discourse shared between many fine minds who have made this their primary occupation. So this is actually really big, and TRION never did anything with this, right? So one begins to wonder if perhaps the rest of the source wells actually formed as a result of Melforge's imprisonment. This is big. I mean, it's kind of like WoW with the Well of Eternity and how it was created by Sargeras ripping out Yasharj. I mean, what if Melforge's imprisonment, like Melforge being at the center of Carcera, is what created the source wells around in Ember Isle? You know, like Melforge being the dragon of fire, you can wonder if perhaps something alchemical happened to the core of Talara. What if Melforge being so deep into the ground, uh, maybe Melforge and all of the dragons actually. What if, I wonder if Melforge was imprisoned last? And if so, what if the core of Talara was affected by Melforge being last, but all of the dragons would have affected the core of Talara? Because, Achilleos is the dragon of water. So water would have created the liquid source wells, basically. Um, but it would have been water, right? But what about all of the other dragons? So Crucio was imprisoned for a long time, and she was the dragon of storm, and Regulus was the dragon of death, and who else? Lathus was the dragon of earth. So what if all of these planar elements created the sort being so deep and underground? What if all of this planar mixing created the source wells and the source stone? The source stone would have been especially because of Lathus being the dragon of earth. So she and Melforge maybe would have created the hardened source. But what if something in their planar elemental, their elemental powers them being so deep underground would have affected the core, and the core would have responded by bringing out this source. I don't know. I mean, this is speculation because, I mean, this was never dealt with. And I hope that Tryon looks at this video, or at least this part of the video, and like, I hope that they do something with this. I hope that they remember they had this book. I hope that they remember that they wrote this because this is fucking huge. Why is there source? And why is there a penury of source? Because the thing is, um, when you question Ember Isle and you question like Stillmore especially, there's such a huge focus on source. Like all of the zones in Mythosia focus on source. They're mining, there's a penury being a drought of source, and especially in Stillmore, they're all like the entire storyline of Stillmore is about, yes, death, but also there's a lot of mining, not mining, but there's a lot of like currency drought, and so like the factions are like stealing from each other, especially when you used to do conquest, which was deleted from the game. I don't know if it was deleted, but it was removed from the game. So we as players cannot do Conquest anymore. But Conquest used to be um, a PvP map in um, in Stillmore. So Stillmore was the original Conquest map, and so you had three factions: one here, and one here ish. Sorry, here, and here, I believe. So you started here and you were like going from source stone extractor to extractor. You were um you were protecting those extractors, and uh you had to conquer all the extractors, and once you got enough extractors you were fighting in the middle here. So you wanted to have the most source stone. But the thing is that after this vanilla, after vanilla, there, the focus really shifted away from source stone and source wells. Like it's like the developers didn't give a shit about source after vanilla. But the thing is that, I mean, this is still in game, and we still don't know what the fuck it is. Like we still don't know how source was created, or why it was created, or when, or anything. So ha! The power that flows out of the source walls seems to be a very base form of source stone, a vaporous form of it, if you will. So, Mailforge being like in Carcera, maybe that's why there's a vaporous form, and Achilleos is nearby too. And Lathis, I don't know why it would be vaporous because of Lathis, but I totally agree that it would be vaporous because of Mailforge. Given the seemingly endless depth of the source wells, their bottom has never successfully been measured, then it seems as if that source might be coming from the heart of the world itself. And that's huge, and they never fucking did anything with this. Given all that has been accomplished with that power, this wouldn't seem to be an overestimation of its potential. If only one of these cracks existed before, and if it represented a single line of access to a very deep and ancient power, please, can we have an answer to this? Perhaps it was depended on in the ritual to imprison Mailforge. Maybe? I mean, we never hear anything about this. And assuming that this crack was actually a flaw in the world's core left by an imperfect creator, who is our creator? And what is the core? And why would there be a flaw? An unavoidable seam in the world's construction, this flaw could have been made worse by drawing out a great deal of power from it. Right? Maybe this is why I think this is why like the prisons that were keeping the dragons failed. But this was never really truly dealt with. Like, yes, we kind of heard that the prisons were failing. This is why Crucia fucking ripped out of her prison, and this is why we had all the raids against the dragons. But like we never learned why they failed. We never really had that kind of information. As a result, more of these cracks could have formed, leading to more source wells. Quite likely, this first source well was once vastly more powerful than our current source wells, as its power would not be split between many places. So, kind of like in the original source well, was probably kind of like the well of eternity in WoW. But this was never really dealt with in game, at least as far as I know. Could this be the secret to how Mailforge was imprisoned? We know it also involved Source Stone of the Plane of Earth, as he is trapped like a fly in amber within a great case of stone. But what caused all that to harden and stay hard despite the heat of the volcano? That's a big question, never answered. Perhaps the power of a protosource well even more powerful than those remaining today? We may never know. Fuck you, I want to know! Anyways, so that's it for today. I just wanted to introduce you guys to a lot more lore and to introduce you to a more rich world than you kind of know in game. Because a lot of people just skip all the questing and skip all the books and don't really know anything about the world that they're exploring and gaming in. But there's quite a lot to learn, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys next time. See ya.